Okay, next on the agenda, Scott McQuarrie and Tanya MacFarlane and Ryean-Marie will be speaking and sharing a little bit about equipment for spills response training and tools.
My name is Scott McQuarrie. I work for the City of Redmond. I'm going to be presenting some information on IDD tools, and then Tanya with Bellevue will present some info on IDD staff training, and Ryean-Marie Tuomisto will get into some IDD record keeping. So a couple years ago, our IT department contacted me and said my cell phone was so old they considered it a security threat. And they gave me the option of kind of shopping around and looking for a cell phone that I liked. It's not the case anymore, but I was curious. I spotted this Caterpillar S61 ruggedized, blah, 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 with an integrated thermal imaging lens to it. So I ended up getting that. Turned out it wasn't that great of a cell phone, and I ended up switching it out. But the thermal imaging camera aspect of it was interesting to me, because at the time I was kind of dealing with a couple failing septic system issues, and I was wondering, well, can I utilize this technology to evaluate and find and document these issues with failing septic systems? So that was kind of the impetus of exploring the thermal imaging camera. And then another one of my thoughts was the cross connection aspect. So maybe documenting something warm coming in that shouldn't from an illicit connection inside a building or somewhere, and then documenting that temperature difference with the thermal imaging camera. This is just a floor drain that was cross connected into a storm drain, and then just dye used to confirm it. Simple basic dye test to confirm it. But it's just illustrates the potential for being able to document if this was an illicit discharge coming through an illicit connection, there might be a funky temperature differential that you could document with thermal imaging. So it was summertime when I got this camera, and we had a large construction site that was digging down into the groundwater table to construct an underground parking garage. And they were dewatering a massive amount of cool, clean groundwater into the warm Sammamish River. And so I took the opportunity to just kind of document proof of concept with the thermal imaging camera. And you can see the cool water coming out of the outfall into the warmer Sammamish River. So that's just the inverse of what you might see from a warm discharge, illicit discharge into cooler stormwater, MS4 or receiving waters. And at this time of year, the salmon were running, they were migrating, and they love to stop at this location and chill out, I guess, on their way heading upstream. And then this is the same outfall discharging from Redmond Way, and looking down on it, you can see the Sammamish River Trail here, and you can see the cooler water discharging into the warmer receiving water. And then it was interesting, I captured a couple pedestrians, some walkers along the trail up there. It was kind of interesting. The other tool I wanted to mention was a pneumatic pipe plug. Don't use it very often, but in this particular case, this was a long time ago. It was a big incident that happened in Redmond. Basically a plug, I don't know how many jurisdictions use these as a part of their IDD program or have the option to, but it's basically just an industrial balloon, industrial rubber, ruggedized balloon. One of these balloons can fit several sizes, like from like 8-inch to 15-inch or something like that. So it covers several pipe sizes. You have this this compressed air hose. You can install the plug from the top side, so you don't have to have anybody crawling down into the structure to insert it into the pipe. And then you have the air release up on the top side too when you want to get it out. So this was 2011. This was just after lunch. I was sitting in my office and I heard a boom, and then a couple seconds later I saw this big plume of smoke about a mile away, and a transformer at a substation had caught fire. And I figured, uh-oh, I better run over there and check it out. It's likely something that Public Works is going to be involved in. And sure enough, on my way over there, I started getting calls, and I basically called our field stormwater crews and street crews and said, this is appears to be an all hands on deck type of incident. And what had happened is this transformer had malfunctioned or blown or caught fire. And you can see in this substation facility here, the stormwater drainage flows through this storm system. And this is a pretty good water quality sensitive creek here where the outfall discharges to. And something that we didn't know at the time and trying to figure out, but it looked like this flow through detention pond or something like that. It ended up being a spill containment pond that was designed to handle spills and have it contained within this pond. So our crews brought the pipe plug, or it was taking some time for the fire department to handle this. There was some issues with their equipment not being able to get close enough to put out the fire. So they had to call SeaTac Airport and request their fire extinguishing truck because it had the range to get close enough to put out the fire. So in the meantime, we decided let's protect the creek because we think they're likely going to be flowing a lot of water and foam on the fire. So we went back and put in this pipe plug here. Just some logistical concerns. You want to understand how much water or liquid you're holding with this pipe plug. You don't want too much pressure. You want to understand the pressures behind it. If it's super deep and you have a lot of liquid it's containing, it could build up a lot of pressure behind it. The other aspect of this is if you have to be able to retrieve it, you have to understand that. Or if it's raining or if it's flooding, you plug a pipe, you want to understand really well what the impacts of that are. And if it's going to flood upstream, is that material you're trying to contain going to go somewhere else, which is worse? So this is SeaTac's fire truck, and they were able to spray foam on it from the distance they needed to. And then you could see this nasty fire effluent going into the containment pond that we had plugged, so it wasn't going anywhere. They actually had a vault here, containment vault, which had an interesting device in it that closes eventually when there senses enough oil in the system, a valve closes. But I think some of that effluent would have gotten out into the creek before that completely closed. So our pipe plug did do some good. And they ran a lot of water on this fire. And I think they were trying to protect what was in these tanks here, maybe mineral oil. But they ran a lot. They were just trying to keep it cool, keep it from igniting again. And they had all the signal lights, and there was just a massive traffic jam all over the east side. And the power companies spill cleanup contractor eventually had to be escorted, I think, by state police because they just couldn't get to the site. So the police had to escort them and get them through the traffic jams and through the lights that were all out, signal lights. But eventually they arrived and started doing their thing, deploying countermeasures, and they brought a Vector truck out. So this was a lesson I learned during this incident, that a Vector truck has a kind of a turbine mechanism creating like a Venturi suction effect. And this type of eductor truck, with the high concentration of fire foam, it can begin to cavitate or agitate the high concentration of fire foam. So you'll have it coming out of the vents. And in this particular case, we had it going, so we had it contained in the pond and on the site. And then this eductor Vector truck showed up, and it started spilling it onto an adjacent separate property into somebody else's storm drain and heading towards a different outfall, which was unfortunate. I told them to buy some time by sucking down the sump pumps of these type 2 manholes, and it allowed us to buy some time, and we were able to contain it in the system. And just a shout out to the spills group back then. They did come out and see how the response was going. So for fire foam, this is the preferred way of sucking up high concentrated fire foam. It's like a septic pumper vacuum system, and it doesn't create the agitation that the eductor trucks do. So they brought out a bunch of these to begin collecting that fire effluent water. And then this incident, this was a big cleanup, and it took many weeks. And as you can see, they had quite the response, and they eventually mitigated and cleaned up the site. And that's it for my presentation. Before I hand it over to Tanya, are there any questions? Sounds good. Do you see anything in chat?
Nope.
Okay. Clear as mud.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty exciting, Scott. I'm covering training, which isn't nearly as exciting. So, but the training that I'm going to talk about touches on what Colleen had talked about earlier. We've got a couple of tiers of training in Bellevue. I'm going to pull up my little presentation here. Can everybody see my spills, my fantastical spills in Bellevue?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. Okay, great. So these are just some of the spills that Bellevue had to take care of in this last year. They're pictures that were either given to me by customers or ones that I took myself. And clearly, you know, some of the materials are difficult to clean up, or we can't identify them all. So as part of our permit requirements for the MPDS permit, we do, Bellevue does some training for staff, staff that responds to spills, and general municipal field staff. This is just an overview of some of the training that our staff attends during any given year. Today, I'm really just going to briefly touch on the annual HAZWOPER refresher and the basic field awareness. Clearly, other training needs to happen as well, but these are two of the most kind of exciting ones that we do that I think are really important. I'm going to start with the HAZWOPER training. So a number of years ago, Bellevue, Kirkland, and Redmond decided to kind of group up and hire a consultant to do some specific training, because we were doing Haswer training, which was more suited for miners or people who work on boats, and not necessarily to municipal staff that is responding to spills. And for those of you who don't know, Haswer training is just awareness around hazardous situations, chemicals, and whatnot that you might come into contact with when you're out responding to a spill or trying to clean one up. So the first picture is Chad Brown. He's our stormwater lead. He has got he's mixing chemicals together to find out what's dissolvable in water or other chemicals. This was a training held in Redmond, and our 3 jurisdictions were there. We got to play with chemicals all day and light stuff on fire and see how things mix. And it was done very safe, but it's great for awareness of maybe you shouldn't throw water on that fire, or maybe you don't want to, you don't want to use a fire extinguisher on something. So great awareness around that. You can see our Scott McQuarrie here in the background in the high vis. He's back there doing the same thing here that Chad is. And the picture on the right is the 3 of us, the 3 jurisdictions. I think on this event, we must have had about 40 people. And our consultant took us up to the Preston Fire Training Center, and we got to light stuff on fire, and we got to practice with different solvents and how to put them out. And we got to do rescues through burned out buildings. And it was, put out fires on burned out cars. And it was fun for all. It was a great bonding event, as well as just a really great introduction to, how to use a fire extinguisher and use a fire hose. We've got our fire extinguishers back here in the background that we're all practicing with. And this is Ryean-Marie, who's trying to put out that chemical fire. The other training I want to talk about is field staff. And this is a really busy slide. I don't expect you guys to read it all, but I every year, or on an annual basis, I take out training to each of our field staff, and I take a PowerPoint out on my little road show, and I go into the streets department, and I go into the fleet, and our storm crew, and our wastewater crew, and I train our field staff on when they're out driving around in the field, they need to call in spills. And this year, because of COVID, I really couldn't do that. So what I did was I worked with a staff member within the city of Bellevue, and he took my PowerPoint and he turned it into an interactive training module. And it was it's about a 30-minute program that anyone can run. 24 hours a day. Our staff, when they're home, can go through this training on their own time, or, during working hours, but from any computer. And let's just see if I can pull it up to show you guys. All right, let's see. I don't think I've got the right one up. Gonna have to give me a minute. Can you see this start course? No.
We can see your slides. Oh,
okay.
You can see that.
Okay. So this is my module that I created for identifying spills. And I'm not going to run through the whole thing. I just want to put you all are welcome to contact me, and I can send you this particular presentation. If you're interested in it, everyone can take a look at it. But just to give you just a quick run through in the next couple of minutes. On the left is kind of what we're going through. We've got a background. I go through a couple of different spill response scenarios. And then there's some in-depth information on like how to identify, like what's an illicit connection and what's a discharge, as well as some pictures that I've taken over the years to, identify, what does a hydrocarbon look like versus what is like rotting bacteria look like. So I kind of go through the background of like why we do it. It's because we have a permit, and we're required to identify and report illicit discharges. And in Bellevue, we don't empower the rest of the staff. I mean, they can call ecology at any moment in time, but reporting typically goes through our department, which is water quality, because we do investigations. We look at the spill, we try to get cleanup happening, and then we trace it through the storm system and then out to see if it hit any waterway. So my biggest deal is just getting all the field staff to funnel all the calls through our water quality staff so we can investigate. So that's kind of a little bit about that. And then this is like the scenario, one of the scenarios that we built. And what's kind of cool about this is that it's interactive. So we've got this water main break scenario. We've got a late night on-call scenario where you show up and you notice there's a huge discharge going into a storm drain. Okay, and then you hit continue. And he says on site to check out a water main break, you notice some liquid draining into the storm drain. You think to yourself, it's probably just water from the break, so it's not a big deal. What do you do? And so you have these choices that you can pick, and you can, if you pick the wrong answer, like, don't worry about it. The discharge is only potable water running into the drain. And then it kind of gives you this answer, like how to redirect it. We know that the only thing that should enter a storm drain is rain. You should always call it in. Let the utilities water quality team determine whether it's an illicit discharge or not. And then kind of like the end result, if you don't call it in, we ended up having you don't call it in, we end up having chlorinated and turbid water that entered the stream, and now we've got a fish kill, right? So that's one possible outcome of that. And then, we've got a couple of different scenarios in here. Let's see, I think I lost my mouse. There it is. Some indicators of illicit discharge you can kind of go through, and they pop open. There's photos of ones that I've taken or that our staff has taken over the years that are for Bellevue. You kind of just pop through some of the smells, you see some odors. And then I did embed a video in for cleaning it up, like how to clean it up. And then that's a 20-minute video, so I'm not going to show that. But in the end, there's a quiz to test the knowledge, and then we capture. You have to take the quiz over again if you don't get enough of the questions right, and then we capture that, and we use that. Everyone who's taken that training, we capture that, and we put it in the end of the year reporting. So that's it for that training. Is there any questions on it?
Sorry, Tanya, I was muted. No questions in the chat so far, but I think people are definitely interested in having a copy of it, if you wouldn't mind forwarding that on.
Yeah, and I'm happy to send it out, and y'all can use it for your own training if you want. Unfortunately, the program that we developed it in is called Articulate, and it's a software purchase. So it's this particular training we made in-house, and it's very Bellevue centric. But if you purchase the software, you could edit it or add to, or the software was Articulate that our in-house guy purchased for the production of this piece. So thank you.
And I think we did have one question, Tanya, for that software. Is there a monthly subscription cost associated with that, or is that a one-time purchase?
It is a 1-year subscription.
One
so
year.
You buy it 1 year at a time, and it is $1,000. This particular training, we took an existing PowerPoint that I'd worked on, and then staff time was about 40 hours to develop this training.
It's a great training. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And then, so up next is Ryean-Marie, and she's going to talk about reporting and the permit. Reporting for the permit.
Thank you, Tanya. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, not the note screen, just the presentation, correct?
Yes,
Okay, great. And I'm assuming you can all hear me, correct?
you sound great.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. I am grateful to be here and doing this presentation with Tanya and Scott. The three of us, the three jurisdictions, we talk often. We like to share information because why reinvent the wheel? And we support each other. And it's such a pleasure to work with these guys. So impressed on all the spill response that Scott has done. And I don't know about you guys, but that training is what inspired City of Kirkland to change our ways in moving to an online training too. Because it's when Tanya sends you that link, you'll see that training is very interactive and it's very engaging. It's fantastic. So today, my presentation hopefully doesn't go from really exciting Scott spills to very cool training of Tanya to, I don't want to say boring record keeping because I think this is exciting, but here we go. So I'm going to talk with you all today about how the City of Kirkland does IDDE record keeping. I'm going to share with you 2 data management programs that the City of Kirkland uses to organize, track, maintain, and report on all of our IDDE responses. So as I mentioned, we have 2 programs that where our IDD information is stored. Responses in the City of Kirkland are a joint effort between 2 different groups and within Public Works. So that is the reasoning why we have 2 different data management programs. Maintenance staff, all of the maintenance activities, information is stored in Lucity. The IDD investigation, permit record reporting, all of that information is stored in Intergov, which is the Tyler Technologies. I'm just going to go with Intergov for the rest of the presentation. That's where all of our information on education and technical assistance, the inspection, investigation, and the regulatory documentation. I'm going to briefly start the presentation talking about Lucity, kind of introducing a spill with what our maintenance staff do. And then I'm going to finish the presentation off with Intergov and our permit reporting program. So I'm going to introduce an IDD response for you. I'm not going to go into the details of what Scott does, but I just kind of want to introduce a spill. And then I want to show you how we collect all the information for that spill response and put it in our report. All spills in the City of Kirkland go directly to our Public Works hotline. So we do outreach for all of our residents as well as our internal to call all of our calls into our Public Works hotline. Public maintenance staff are the first to be dispatched to make sure that we are protecting that infrastructure. Maintenance staff in Lucity, so again, remember, we're starting off in Lucity, have access to the full stormwater system in the city. So on your screen, you'll see a snapshot of the City of Kirkland and purple lines everywhere. That's our stormwater system. So in Lucity, in the field, they have their tough books and they have access to this program. And when responding to spills, one of the first goals is to find and stop the source of the spill, if it's an active spill. One of the cool features of Lucity that we really just love is the ability to trace spills upstream and downstream. So let's remember, we have staff responding to a white plume coming out of an outfall. With a touch of a button, they can trace the stormwater system upstream. This helps us efficiently look for the source of the spill. As staff are responding, they're creating a work order in Lucity. So that's on the top left-hand side there. That Lucity work order number is where all of the activities, the time, the resources, all of the information that the maintenance staff are gathering or collecting or doing is stored in this Lucity work order, as well as the details in as that they're collecting as the first responder of the spill. This is also where the communication between the maintenance staff and the surface water, the IDDE inspector starts occurring, and where Lucity and Intergov start communicating. And you'll see at the bottom right-hand side of the screen, the Intergov number. So we have we have, when I say we, I mean our IT folks have been able to get Lucity and Intergov to communicate with each other. So now I'm going to move from Lucity. Now, again, it was a very high level view of Lucity, and move into Intergov. So at this point, our IDDE responders are responding to the spill. And Intergov, just to back up, just to give you a little information about what Intergov is. For the city of Kirkland, Intergov is the program where all of the permitting and inspection information is for development, building, and planning departments. So for all of those departments, all of the permitting and all of the inspection information is stored in Intergov. So this is the program where I needed to track and report for our stormwater permit. So our new permit, I was in Intergov, and I decided to work with IT to make Intergov work for us, because what I wanted to do is capture Appendix 12 in Intergov. So this is a busy slide, and I'm not expecting you guys all to read all the fine print there. Most of you guys, it looks familiar. This is Appendix 12 of our Phase 2 permit. If you go through all the information of this Appendix 12, this is the information that you gather with a spill. This is how the spill was reported, who's the responsible party, what the spill was, when it happened, where it is, where it's going to, all of the details, all of the fun details that you're gathering in the spill. So back to Intergov, what we decided to do is we have this data management program. And one of the options of our permit was we can use the ecology water quality web form, or we can track it in our own database and then submit it to Ecologies. And that's exactly what we did. So I'm going to show you how we did that in Intergov. So we customize a program to mimic Appendix 12.
Hey, Ryean-Marie, just real quick, that previous slide, you had the squares, different color codes.
Yes. Good
is
question.
that going to be presented later on as to the difference in those? Okay.
Yes, good point. So I did color code that, and you'll see it as I go on to later on in the presentation. I color coded this because these are blocks of information of how I created my form. So not that I'm asking you to kind of memorize it, but you'll see that all of the information, the different questions of Appendix 12, I blocked them into different sections. So just remember the color coding. I don't know if you guys are home edit fans, but the color coding, you'll see that in the next couple of slides. But good point, Scott. Thank you. So, so for Intergov, the first page that we have here, the great thing about this first page is we can track the information of the address, the location of the spill, and violator or contact information, maybe the complainant. So the first page of Intergov, we were able to collect that type of information. Where we're collecting all the other information in Appendix 12 is an additional info. This is where we customize these forms. So here you go, you see the rainbow of colors. Those blocks of colors on this form are reverting back to is what we mimicked in Appendix 12. So in additional info, when I click that tab, this form will pop up, and this form with different tabs. In each tab, it allows you to collect or track the data on that spill, to track the information of how the spill was reported, what it was, when, and all the other details. So what I'm going to do is, give you a snap, show you each tab and show you how we're collecting that information. So the first tab is the IDD notification. So in this tab is when we are collecting the dates that we were notified of the spill, when we responded, and when the spill ended. We're also collecting how the spill was reported to us, as well as the other important notification requirements, such as an IRTS number or an S4F mailing. So this is our tab that keeps track of notification for us. The second tab is, and you'll notice as we go through these tabs, 95% of the wording is right from Appendix 12. We've added a couple other words in there where we are curious about other information, but majority of it, we just mimicked Appendix 12. So this tab is the pollutant identified in source or cause from Appendix 12. And I'll just pause and I'll let you guys take a look at the form and move on. The third tab is the source tracing and correction elimination methods. Again, this is just basic information that we accumulate in the fields and use for reporting. And the final tabs, I grouped them all in green, are all of the notes. So it's the workflow, if you will. The Lucidity, again, is where we're tying it back to these two programs talk to each other. So I'm able to get a snapshot of what the crews did in the fields. The COK, City of Kirkland notes of all the information of when I made phone calls, left messages, that type of information. And the ecology notes are the notes that I'm telling the story for the Department of Ecology. So to ensure that the permit reporting is correct, I routinely do a QA/QC of this data to ensure all the information was inputted correctly. As easy as that seems, we can always hit the wrong button or maybe spell something incorrectly. So I routinely go in and take a look at a month or a quarter. Here's third quarter, and I use this as a snapshot to show you some of the text in red, because it highlights when there's mistakes or information wasn't inputted correctly. So after review, the data is put into an electronic format that follows the data schema of Appendix 12. And with a click of a button, it drops right into the Department of Ecology's database. So the form that I showed you guys, the tabs that we showed you, seems easy enough. That was a good 8 to 12 months of some data manipulation and summarizing and reporting and cleaning up, but it is becoming, it's about a year's worth of work that we're hoping that is going to make our reporting ease and be able to tell our story of our spills very simply and easily. And that is my presentation. Do you have any questions?